What if enduring unimaginable suffering wasn't just about inner strength, but a divine calling beyond human understanding? What if, in our darkest moments, there's a higher force guiding us? Meet Padre Pio, a man whose life defied logic and whose unwavering faith brought him both immense suffering and extraordinary healing power. Known for bearing the stigmata, the wounds of Christ, Padre Pio became a living testimony to the union of human fragility and divine grace. But his journey wasn't only physical, it was spiritual and emotional too. Filled with sacrifices and relentless pursuit of holiness. In this video, we'll uncover a crucial moment of his life and explore the profound truths revealed in his final hours. What message does his legacy offer us today? Stay with us as we delve into Padre Pio's struggles, spiritual revelations, and timeless lessons that might change how you see faith and endurance. Like, subscribe, and join us for more inspiring stories. Padre Pio was born Francesco Forgione on May 25, 1887, in Pietrelcina, a small town in southern Italy. From a young age, he exhibited a deep devotion to God. His spiritual journey began early, as he experienced intense moments of prayer and mystical experiences that set him apart from others. Even as a child, Francesco felt the call to a life of holiness, which eventually led him to join the Capuchin order at the age of 15. He took the name Padre Pio when he entered the religious life, a name that would become known around the world. But it wasn't just his devotion that would define his legacy, it was his extraordinary experiences that set him apart as one of the most revered saints in modern history. At the age of 31, Padre Pio received a supernatural gift that would become a hallmark of his life, the stigmata, the sacred wounds of Christ. These wounds, which appeared on his hands, feet, and side, were a visible sign of his deep union with Christ's suffering. They caused him immense physical pain. Yet he endured them in silence, offering his suffering up for the salvation of souls. His stigmata remained with him for the rest of his life, a constant reminder of his intimate connection with Christ's passion. Throughout his life, Padre Pio's holiness was not just reflected in his stigmata but in his way of life. His commitment to prayer, penance, and helping others was unwavering. He was known for his long hours spent in the confessional, offering guidance and absolution to thousands of penitents who came to him seeking spiritual healing. His ability to read souls, a gift known as discernment of spirits, led many to believe that he was a living instrument of God's grace. Countless people reported experiencing miraculous healings, conversions, and profound spiritual experiences after encountering Padre Pio. However, Padre Pio's journey was not without immense personal suffering. While he carried the stigmata, he also faced deep spiritual battles, isolation, and skepticism from both church authorities and the public. Many questioned the authenticity of his mystical experiences, and he was even subjected to scrutiny and restriction by the Vatican. For many years, he was not allowed to publicly celebrate Massachusetts, a source of deep sorrow for him. Yet he continued to minister to his faithful with love and devotion. Despite the trials and tribulations, Padre Pio never wavered in his faith. His response to suffering was always one of surrender to God's will, trusting that each moment, no matter how painful, had a divine purpose. Padre Pio's legacy is not only found in the miraculous events that surrounded his life but in the spiritual lessons he imparted to those who sought his counsel. He taught the importance of prayer, penance, and living a life dedicated to God's service. He often reminded his followers that the path to holiness was not one of ease but one of sacrifice, patience, and perseverance. His words continue to inspire countless individuals to live their faith with greater devotion. even in the face of hardship. On September 23, 1968, after years of physical suffering and spiritual trials, Padre Pio passed away at the age of 81. His death marked the end of a remarkable life. But his influence has never waned. In 2002, he was canonized as a saint by Pope John Paul II. A testament to his extraordinary holiness and the lasting impact of his life. Today, Padre Pio's message of faith, hope, and endurance continues to resonate with people around the world. His life stands as a powerful reminder that through suffering, we can draw closer to God and become instruments of His grace. Padre Pio's unwavering devotion, miraculous gifts, and willingness to embrace the cross serve as a beacon of hope for those struggling with their own challenges. His life is a testimony to the power of faith, the importance of prayer, and the transformative power of God's love. In the next part of our journey, we'll explore the final hours of Padre Pio's life. A time when profound spiritual truths were revealed. How did his legacy continue to inspire those around him even as he approached his final breath? Stay with us as we discover the deep spiritual wisdom he imparted in those last moments. The Stigmata. The mysterious marks that appeared on Padre Pio's body were among the most extraordinary and puzzling aspects of his life. These wounds, which appeared on his hands, feet, and side, were similar to those suffered by Jesus Christ during his crucifixion. The marks of the stigmata are a rare phenomenon, seen in a few saints and mystics throughout Christian history. But the case of Padre Pio stands out not only because of their extraordinary nature but also because of their lasting impact on his ministry and the lives of the faithful. Padre Pio first received the stigmata in 1910. At the age of 31. After spending a period of intense prayer and suffering, he described the experience as a deeply spiritual event. One in which he felt united with Christ's passion. Over the years, the wounds became a permanent part of his body. The wounds on his hands and feet appeared as open sores, with blood flowing from them just as it had from Christ during his crucifixion. The wound on his side was similarly deep and bled frequently, often soaking his clothing. Despite their visibility and the undeniable pain they caused, Padre Pio never sought to draw attention to them. He carried them as a gift from God, a mark of his intimate relationship with Christ, and often kept them covered to avoid public scrutiny. The stigmata were not simply a physical affliction for Padre Pio, they were a profound spiritual experience. For him, the wounds were not a sign of glory or personal exaltation, but rather a continuous call to deeper union with Christ and a reminder of the suffering that Christ endured for the salvation of humanity. Padre Pio accepted his stigmata as a sharing in the passion of Christ, offering his own pain and suffering for the salvation of souls. This deep union with Christ was evident in the way he spoke about his wounds. He often referred to them as a means to help him draw closer to Christ, both physically and spiritually. His stigmata were, in a sense, a living representation of the sacrifice that Jesus made for the world. The physical reality of Padre Pio's stigmata was remarkable not only for its authenticity but also for its persistence. The wounds bled regularly, and doctors who examined him over the years could find no natural explanation for them. Many believe that Padre Pio's stigmata were the result of divine intervention, a supernatural gift that was intimately connected to his holiness and his mission as a servant of God. In fact, the stigmata were so profound that even skeptics were forced to acknowledge their authenticity. The wounds were genuine, and their miraculous nature became an undeniable part of Padre Pio's legacy. Despite the intense pain, Padre Pio never allowed his suffering to diminish his faith or his sense of service. He continued to offer spiritual counsel to thousands of people, spending long hours in the confessional, Despite the physical toll the wounds took on his body, his stigmata were also a source of controversy. Some church authorities were suspicious of the wounds, and Padre Pio was at times subjected to investigations and scrutiny. There were even periods when he was prohibited from publicly celebrating Mass or hearing confessions. However, his personal holiness and the undeniable miracles attributed to his intercession led to widespread devotion among the people. And he remained a powerful symbol of God's grace in the face of suffering. The stigmata were not a solitary phenomenon in Padre Pio's life. They were part of a larger mystical experience that included visions, prophecies, and the ability to read souls. These supernatural gifts helped him guide the faithful and encouraged many to seek a deeper connection with God. Padre Pio's stigmata were not simply marks of suffering, they were also signs of healing. Many who sought Padre Pio's intercession experienced profound physical and spiritual healings. The stigmata, in this sense, became a symbol of Christ's ultimate act of healing, the crucifixion, which brought both suffering and redemption to the world. As the years passed and Padre Pio's health began to decline, the stigmata caused him great pain. But he never sought to be relieved of them. He accepted his suffering as a means of purifying his soul and uniting himself more fully with Christ's redemptive work. When Padre Pio died in 1968, his stigmata were still visible, and they remained a defining feature of his life. His life, his suffering, and his miraculous gifts left an indelible mark on the Church and on the world. Padre Pio's stigmata continue to inspire and challenge those who look to his example of faith and endurance. For many, the stigmata are a reminder of the powerful mystery of God's grace, which can work in unexpected and extraordinary ways. They are a testament to the reality of Christ's suffering and the transformative power of love and sacrifice. Through his stigmata, Padre Pio demonstrated that suffering, when united with God's will, becomes a pathway to holiness and redemption. His life and his wounds continue to speak to the faithful today, inviting them to live lives of greater devotion, sacrifice, and love. This explanation of Padre Pio's stigmata covers its spiritual significance. Physical manifest. The final years of Padre Pio's life were marked by increasing physical suffering, as well as profound spiritual challenges. Having lived with the stigmata for decades, the burden of carrying these marks of Christ's passion took its toll on his body. By the 1960s, Padre Pio's health had significantly deteriorated, but his commitment to his mission remained unwavering. Even as his body weakened, his spiritual strength and connection to God only deepened. In the last decade of his life, Padre Pio's reputation had grown beyond measure. Thousands of pilgrims traveled from all corners of the world to seek his counsel, confession, and intercession. His spiritual influence was immense, and people were drawn to him not only for his remarkable gift of healing but also for the profound peace that emanated from his presence. Despite the physical pain from his stigmata, the exhaustion from constant ministry, and various health complications, Padre Pio remained deeply engaged with the lives of those around him. However, as his health continued to decline, he was faced with new challenges. In 1960, his superiors ordered that he be restricted from publicly celebrating Massachusetts, a decision that caused him deep sorrow, as the Holy Eucharist was the center of his life. Although he was allowed to continue his priestly duties in private, the restriction was a great burden for Padre Pio, who found his greatest joy in offering the Mass and hearing confessions. Despite these challenges, he remained obedient to the Church's directives and carried the weight of his suffering with humility, never complaining. In addition to his health struggles, Padre Pio was also dealing with increased scrutiny from the Church. Over the years, There had been several investigations into the authenticity of his stigmata and the many mystical experiences he claimed to have had. Church authorities were cautious and, at times, skeptical, which led to periods of isolation for Padre Pio. Despite the controversies, his influence only grew. The faith and love of the people for him were undeniable, and his legacy continued to spread. One of the most profound aspects of Padre Pio's final years was his deep spiritual suffering. In his letters, he spoke of experiencing intense spiritual desolation, a feeling of abandonment by God. Yet, even in these moments of darkness, he continued to offer himself to God's will. His deep faith allowed him to embrace this suffering with trust, knowing that God was with him in the silence and desolation. Many of his followers and spiritual children were unaware of the depths of his inner struggles, as he rarely spoke of them. Instead, he focused on praying for others, offering spiritual counsel, and guiding the many souls who sought him out. Padre Pio's suffering was not limited to physical pain but extended into the realm of spiritual warfare. He frequently encountered temptations, doubts, and periods of spiritual dryness, which he viewed as part of the path of holiness. He believed that such struggles were a means of purifying the soul, a way of identifying more closely with Christ's own suffering. Padre Pio's final years were not free from personal challenges, but he accepted them with remarkable grace and fortitude. As his health worsened, Padre Pio's strength began to diminish. He spent much of his time in prayer and in the confessional, but he was increasingly frail and required assistance. Despite his physical limitations, he continued to serve others with the same fervor he had demonstrated throughout his life. His love for Christ and the Church never waned. In the final months before his death, his physical condition became critical. But even then, Padre Pio's spiritual life remained rich and vibrant, and he continued to radiate the peace and presence of God to those around him. On September 23, 1968, Padre Pio passed away at the age of 81. His death marked the end of an era for the faithful, who had been touched by his holiness, his suffering, and his ministry. Those who had encountered him in life spoke of his profound humility and his unwavering devotion to God. Even in his final moments, Padre Pio exemplified the virtues of faith, hope, and charity, enduring suffering with grace and offering his life as a sacrifice for the salvation of souls. His passing was mourned by countless people who had experienced the transformative power of his presence. For many, Padre Pio's death signaled the end of an extraordinary chapter in the life of the Church. Yet, in death, Padre Pio's legacy continued to live on. Thousands of people who had been healed through his intercession, or who had experienced personal transformation as a result of his prayers, honored his memory by spreading his message of faith, love, and suffering united with Christ. In the years following his death, Padre Pio's cause for beatification and canonization gained momentum. In 1999, he was beatified by Pope John Paul II. And in 2002, he was canonized as a saint of the Catholic Church. Today, Padre Pio is considered one of the most beloved and revered saints of the modern era. His final years, marked by suffering, faith, and obedience, serve as a powerful testament to the transformative power of God's grace and the enduring strength of the human spirit when united with divine love. Padre Pio's life was defined by a profound, personal relationship with Jesus, one that shaped his every action. From his youth, he felt an intense connection to Christ, not as a distant figure but as a living, present reality. This intimate bond was visible through his mystical experiences, in which he frequently encountered Jesus in visions, prayer, and moments of intense suffering. The most visible sign of this union was the stigmata, the wounds of Christ that Padre Pio bore on his body. These marks were not just physical but spiritual, marking his deep participation in Christ's suffering. For Padre Pio, the stigmata was a gift from Jesus, a way for him to intimately share in the Lord's passion and to offer his own suffering for the salvation of souls. Each wound was a reminder of Jesus' love and a call to deeper holiness. Padre Pio's encounters with Jesus were not confined to visions or the stigmata. He often spoke of hearing Christ's voice and experiencing deep spiritual ecstasies, during which he felt engulfed by Christ's love and presence. These moments were transformative, leaving him in profound peace, and were often witnessed by others who described his raptures during prayer. His prayer life was not just communication but a mystical union with God, transcending the ordinary. Padre Pio also received direct guidance from Jesus, especially in moments of great distress. In his letters, he described how Christ spoke to him about the loss of souls to sin, encouraging him to offer his suffering for their salvation. This deep sense of mission fueled his relentless work, particularly in the confessional, where he had the ability to read souls, often knowing penitents' sins before they spoke. For Padre Pio, every confession was a powerful encounter with Christ's mercy, and he saw himself as merely an instrument of God's will. Even in times of spiritual dryness, Padre Pio remained faithful, accepting these periods as a way of sharing in Christ's abandonment on the cross. He once said, "I am in the hands of God, and He can do with me whatever He wishes." This surrender to God's will was the hallmark of his life. In his final years, as his health declined, Padre Pio's relationship with Jesus deepened, with his desire for union with Christ growing stronger. In his last moments, he whispered the name of Jesus, a final act of love and surrender, affirming his lifelong faith and devotion. Through every encounter with Jesus, whether in moments of joy or suffering, Padre Pio lived in constant communion with the Lord, inspiring millions with his unwavering trust and deep love for Christ. The life of Padre Pio offers profound insights into faith, suffering, and the enduring power of divine grace. His journey, marked by physical and spiritual battles, provides lessons that resonate deeply with our modern lives. For many, Padre Pio's example is a beacon of hope, reminding us that even in our most painful moments, there is a deeper purpose at work. One of the most significant lessons from Padre Pio's life is the transformative power of suffering. In a world that often seeks to avoid pain, Padre Pio showed us that suffering, when united with Christ, can become a pathway to holiness. His ability to endure unimaginable physical and emotional torment without losing faith is a testament to the power of divine grace. He taught that suffering, though difficult, can be redemptive when offered to God for the sake of others. Padre Pio's life invites us to reconsider how we view our own struggles. Rather than seeing them as burdens, we can view them as opportunities for growth and transformation. Padre Pio also demonstrated the importance of perseverance in faith. Despite facing skepticism, rejection, and even accusations of fraud, he remained steadfast in his commitment to God's will. His unwavering belief in God's plan for him encourages us to stay true to our faith, even in times of doubt or opposition. His life teaches that faith is not about avoiding challenges, but about trusting God through them. Another critical lesson is the power of prayer and spiritual discipline. Padre Pio's devotion to prayer, particularly the Holy Mass and the Rosary, was central to his life. His intense prayer life allowed him to stay in constant communion with God, providing him the strength to endure his sufferings. He taught that prayer is not a mere ritual, but a profound conversation with God that strengthens us spiritually and helps us align with His will. For us, this emphasizes the importance of nurturing a personal relationship with God through regular prayer. Even when life is challenging, Padre Pio's capacity for forgiveness and compassion also stands out. He believed in the power of reconciliation and spent countless hours hearing confessions. His ability to read souls and guide others toward repentance speaks to his deep empathy and understanding of human frailty. Through his example, we are reminded of the importance of compassion and forgiveness, not only toward others but also toward ourselves. In a world filled with conflict, the ability to forgive and offer mercy is a message that has never been more relevant. Lastly, Padre Pio's life is a reminder that holiness is not about perfection, but about surrendering to God's will. His personal struggles, doubts, and moments of dryness show that even the holiest individuals are not immune to hardship. However, it is in how we respond to these challenges, through faith, trust, and surrender, that true holiness is found. Padre Pio's life encourages us to embrace our imperfections and trust in God's grace to transform us. In the end, Padre Pio's life calls us to live with a deep awareness of God's presence, to trust in His divine plan, and to offer ourselves completely to His will. His example of faith, suffering, and love for God continues to inspire millions, reminding us that no matter the circumstances, we are never alone. God's grace is always with us, guiding us toward a deeper, more profound relationship with Him. Padre Pio was not only known for his deep spirituality, stigmata, and healing powers, but also for his ability to prophesy. Throughout his life, Padre Pio was reported to have made numerous predictions about future events, many of which have sparked reflection in the context of the modern world. His prophecies, often communicated privately to those close to him or in personal letters, were not sensationalized but rather rooted in a deep understanding of God's divine plan. They reflect his connection to the spiritual realm and his unique ability to discern signs of the times. One of Padre Pio's most well-known prophecies concerned the Church and the challenges it would face. He foresaw a time of great turmoil, both within the Church and in the broader world. His words about a great storm affecting the Catholic faith ring particularly true in today's context, where the Church faces internal divisions, external criticism, and struggles with contemporary issues. Padre Pio predicted that the faithful would face confusion, but that a renewal of the Church would ultimately emerge from the trials. This renewal would come from a return to prayer, devotion, and authentic faith, much like the lessons he exemplified in his own life. In the broader context, Padre Pio's prophecies also included warnings about global events. He spoke about a great war that would come, and many believe he was referring to the devastating global conflicts of the 20th century. Though he did not specify exact details, his predictions about wars, social unrest, and natural disasters seem to resonate with the turbulence the world faces today. Given the ongoing conflicts in various parts of the world, economic crises, and social upheaval, many see Padre Pio's warnings as eerily relevant. Padre Pio also foretold the rise of materialism and the growing rejection of faith in the modern world. He observed that humanity was moving further away from God, and he warned that such a shift would lead to suffering, both spiritually and socially. His words are particularly poignant today, in an era marked by a global obsession with technology, consumerism, and secularism. The consequences of this growing detachment from faith are evident in the moral and spiritual decline many feel is happening worldwide. But Padre Pio's prophecies were not all dire. He spoke of the eventual triumph of good over evil. He often referenced the intercession of the Virgin Mary and the power of prayer in bringing about change. In a world rife with fear, uncertainty, and strife, Padre Pio's words offer hope. He consistently reminded his followers that in times of trial, it is crucial to hold fast to faith, as God's will would ultimately prevail. The relevance of Padre Pio's prophecies can also be seen in the way the modern Church is navigating contemporary challenges. Many of the issues he warned about, such as the loss of sacredness in worship and the confusion within the faithful, have become central debates today. Padre Pio's life was a testament to the importance of remaining steadfast in one's faith even when the world around us seems chaotic or indifferent. His prophecies call for a return to a simpler, more profound faith, one rooted in prayer, humility, and a deep connection to God. While we may not know the exact timeline or specific events that Padre Pio foresaw, the spirit of his prophecies remains clear. We must confront the challenges of the world with the same courage, humility, and faith that he demonstrated in his life. His prophecies remind us that despite the tumult of the world, there is always hope in the divine plan. And our role is to stay grounded in faith, prayer, and trust in God's mercy. In the current world context, Padre Pio's message speaks to the need for spiritual renewal and a return to the fundamentals of the Christian faith. In an age where many are questioning the purpose and meaning of life, his prophecies challenge us to consider the spiritual dimension of our existence and to seek a deeper relationship with God. The world struggles, from political instability to environmental concerns, can often feel overwhelming. But Padre Pio's life and prophecies remind us that God is always present, guiding us through every storm. Through prayer, faith, and trust in God's plan, we can find hope in even the darkest of times. Padre Pio's prophetic words serve as a timeless reminder that no matter how uncertain the future may seem, faith in God offers us a solid foundation. His life encourages us to remain vigilant, prayerful, and committed to living out our Christian calling, knowing that ultimately, God's will shall prevail over all things. Padre Pio's life and legacy serve as an enduring testament to the transformative power of faith, prayer, and unwavering devotion. His journey, marked by the profound experience of the Stigmata, his encounters with Jesus, and his many prophecies, continues to inspire millions around the world today. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of Padre Pio's life is not just the extraordinary supernatural elements, but his humble and steadfast commitment to serving God. Despite the immense suffering he endured, his deep spirituality was not only about bearing the wounds of Christ or performing miraculous healings. It was about embracing the cross of daily life with grace and resilience, seeking to fulfill his divine purpose even in the face of rejection and misunderstanding. The challenges Padre Pio faced, both physical and emotional, were not just tests of his strength, but invitations to grow closer to God and to offer his suffering for the salvation of others. Through his example, we are reminded that it is not the absence of suffering that defines holiness, but the way in which we respond to it. In today's world, filled with uncertainty and turmoil, Padre Pio's example is more relevant than ever. His prophecies, which foresaw a time of great trials, remind us that faith and hope are more crucial than ever. The modern world, with its emphasis on materialism and distraction, can often lead us to forget the deeper spiritual truths that sustain us. In a society where uncertainty looms and faith is sometimes questioned, we must turn back to the lessons Padre Pio shared through his life and teachings. His message is clear: stay grounded in faith. Trust in God's plan. And persevere through the storms of life with the knowledge that God's will is always guiding us. So, what can we take away from Padre Pio's remarkable life? First and foremost, we are called to deepen our relationship with God. Embracing prayer as the foundation of our daily lives. Padre Pio's commitment to prayer, especially his devotion to the Rosary and the Massachusetts, demonstrates the importance of staying connected to God through these powerful acts of faith. We are reminded that prayer is not just about asking for help in times of need, but about aligning ourselves with God's will and finding peace in His presence. Secondly, Padre Pio's life teaches us the importance of perseverance in the face of suffering. Life will inevitably bring challenges, whether they be physical, emotional, or spiritual. But through Padre Pio's example, we are reminded that suffering is not something to be feared or avoided, but something to be embraced as a means of purification and spiritual growth. He showed us that when we endure suffering with faith, it becomes a powerful tool for transformation, both for ourselves and for others. Finally, Padre Pio's life calls us to live with compassion and humility, seeking to serve others just as he did. Despite the many hardships he faced, Padre Pio was always ready to help those in need, whether through his physical healing powers or by offering counsel and spiritual guidance. His life challenges us to look beyond ourselves and serve those around us with the same love and devotion he demonstrated. In light of Padre Pio's legacy, let us take action by deepening our own faith, strengthening our prayer lives, and finding ways to serve others in our communities. Let us not be discouraged by the struggles we face, but rather see them as opportunities to grow in holiness and draw closer to God. Like Padre Pio, we are called to be living witnesses of God's love, enduring life's challenges with grace and offering our suffering for the good of others. As we reflect on his life and teachings, let us ask ourselves, how can we embody the lessons of Padre Pio in our daily lives? Are we willing to persevere in faith, even when faced with hardship? Will we commit to a deeper relationship with God through prayer and service to others? These are the questions we must consider as we move forward in our own spiritual journeys. Padre Pio's call to action is clear: embrace your cross, remain steadfast in faith, and trust in the divine plan that God has for you. By doing so, we can find the peace, strength, and purpose that comes from living a life fully surrendered to God. Let us honor his legacy by carrying his message forward and sharing his example of profound faith and love with the world.